What's going on, guys? Welcome to We Got a Problem. Now, before I start, I have a BitChute account, even if it won't let me upload video files. For some reason, the files are not accepted, no matter what I try. But when I sort it out, I will upload there as well, so the link will be below. But enough of that, let's get into the actual video. Now, last night we had Piers Morgan from the ITV1 show Good Morning Britain appearing on the BBC Question Time show, hosted by Fiona Bruce. On the show with him was the Tory MP Nicky Morgan, Labour MP Anneliese Dodds, Drew Hendry MP from the SNP party, and Alison Phillips, editor of the Daily Mirror. Now, the topic of the show was, of course, the US President and God Emperor Donald Trump's state visit to the UK. Now, I've done a few videos on this now, but it seems the Trump derangement syndrome is still in full swing among the rabid ideologues. So we will take a look at some of the better moments of the Question Time show and discuss both the questions and answers given on the show. Now, let's check out the very first question, where an audience member asks, should the leader of the opposition be protesting the President of the United States? Now, let's hear it and the first answer from the Tory MP, Nicky Morgan.
Right, let's have our first question tonight, which is from Kyle Bradshaw.
Should the leader of the opposition be protesting against the President of the United States?
Of course, Jeremy Corbyn was at a protest while Donald Trump was here. Nicky Morgan.
No, I don't think he should be, because actually, whatever we might think about Donald Trump per se, actually he is the President of the United States, and one would assume that the leader of the opposition, I shall do all I can to stop him becoming Prime Minister, but presumably he wants to become Prime Minister, and as Prime Minister representing this country, he would need to have a relationship with one of our most important allies and the leader of one of our most important relationships around the world. This week, he has shown that actually he's not wanting to do that, take on that responsibility. But
well, he did try to have a meeting with Donald Trump, but
well, he tried
Donald Trump didn't appear to want to.
He was invited to the state banquet. He was invited, I think, to opportunities to meet him, and instead he chose to be out whipping up people into protest. Of course, there is a place for protest, there's a place for free speech, but no. The leader of the opposition, if he's serious about wanting to get into government, and he's shown this week that he is not serious about wanting to be in government, he is about protest.
Anneliese?
So Nicky Morgan calls out the fact Jeremy Corbyn rejected the banquet invitation from the Queen, but requested a private meeting. Then, when Trump rejected his invitation to a private meeting, he decided to keep it quiet and play it like he'd always planned to boycott Trump and protest against him. I'm guessing he stupidly thought Trump wouldn't call him out for it. How wrong was he? I bet Theresa May put a word in Trump's ear to call out Comrade Corbyn at the press conference. When Trump told her the Labour leader had asked for a secret meeting, I expect she told him, say that in the press conference. Now, Nicky Morgan nails it, and as you can see, the complete salt on the Labour MP's face when the camera pans to her, that was a great moment. She knows she can't argue facts and she can't scream like a wild animal on TV, so she scowls at the woman who's dismantling her party's leader. Let's hear the Labour MP's response next and see what she has to say in Comrade Corbyn's defence.
I don't think you'll be surprised to hear that I don't agree with that. I don't think it was right, actually, that particularly during this week, we should have a state visit for somebody like President Trump. And it was a state visit. It would have been perfectly possible for him to come, quite rightly, to participate in those very, very important commemorations that we have on this week in an official capacity, as indeed did other leaders. But instead, the government decided to give him that state visit.
But you know the argument that's come up time and time again about this, which is why Jeremy Corbyn thought it was OK to go to attend a state visit for Xi Jinping of China,
because
who's been massively criticised for human rights violations, mass detention of the Uyghur people. Why is that OK? But it's not OK to be Donald Trump?
Because these are very different circumstances, because with the US, quite rightly, we've got a special relationship. That special relationship is based on democratic values, which sadly President Trump is not heeding. And even before he came into our country, he was criticising British institutions, you know, some of which are not able to answer back. He was criticising members of our royal family. He was criticising the Mayor of London.
Well, he denies that he was.
And
was it a bit embarrassing when it came out about this meeting that Jeremy Corbyn had requested with Trump
I don't think
because he was
embarrassing at all.
protesting.
No,
He'd
quite
requested
the
a meeting,
opposite.
but that only became apparent when Donald Trump mentioned it. Was that not?
No, quite the opposite. The whole point of requesting that meeting is because we need to have a robust dialogue with President Trump. But according him, all that pomp and splendour of a state visit was completely inappropriate. And that was why Jeremy said, let's have a meeting, let's have that robust dialogue, but we should not be giving him that legitimacy through a state visit. And, you know, this is not about the UK's relationship with the US. That's not what it's about. It's about whether it's right to honour President Trump in this way as an individual. And I'm afraid that's what we did this week, and that was the wrong decision. It should not have happened.
So obviously she disagrees. You can guess that by the look on her face beforehand. Otherwise she would be booted out of the Communist Labour Party before her feet touched the ground. They don't accept any disloyalty, remember, as we recently found out. This Ramona then goes on to express how she disagrees with Trump getting a state visit. My response to that is, if you have a problem with the Queen's choices regarding who she invites to her country, then resign your position as MP and stop serving in the Queen's opposition party. Oh no, you won't do that, because then you will lose all the money that comes with your job and the press that you get that goes with it. Now she goes on to say Trump's state visit is not okay, but the Chinese state visit was fine, even though there is human rights issues relating to the Chinese administration. Trump has none of them, of course, but somehow this woman's Trump derangement syndrome gives her the fantasy Trump saying grab them by the pussy is a more serious moral crime than abusing people's human rights. That makes the Labour Party sound fascist to me, but what else is new? She claims Trump is ignoring democratic values. I would love for her to have some actual evidence for that, rather than just spouting off labels, especially considering her party wants to ignore the democratic vote that happened back in 2016 to leave the EU. Going back on Brexit is undemocratic, but she doesn't care about that. The Labour MP also makes the claim that Trump insulted British institutions. Which British institutions did he insult? This is the first I have heard of this. Claims he criticised a member of the royal family also, which has already been debunked since he clearly inferred her comments had been nasty. Not she is nasty. He even reinforced that fact when he tweeted the London Mayor Sadiq Khan, where he quotes the word nasty in his tweet calling him a stone-cold loser. The woman is clutching at straws now and tops it off saying it's not embarrassing for Trump to call out her party's leader as boycotting Trump in public life while begging for a meeting in private. His credibility is rock bottom, so I suppose nothing is embarrassing. Maybe she is right.
Piers.
Well, the truth about Jeremy Corbyn is, had it been a Hamas terrorist or an IRA terrorist or somebody like that, well, sorry.
You're getting mass groans from the audience,
Fine.
Piers. I have to point
you
that out.
may not want to hear the truth, but it's the truth. Had it been somebody of that ilk, Jeremy Corbyn would have been around there making them cups of tea. Just as he rolled up to the Buckingham Palace for the state banquet for President Xi of China, which, I mean, has a far worse human rights record than America. The point about it wasn't a personal visit. Donald Trump was invited on a state visit by the Queen, by Her Majesty the Queen, because it's the 75th anniversary of D-Day. And it was a chance to bring together these two great countries, which 75 years ago fought for our freedom and democracy. That's why Donald Trump was here. And, you know, we have to work out who our friends are in this world right now. It's a tough world. It's a rough world. And Donald Trump is the president of our #1 ally. And as we leave the European Union, which we have to do, and I'm sure we'll come to this, as we leave the European Union, never has that relationship been more important. And the spectacle, frankly, of the Labour Mayor of London spending 2 days before Trump even got here howling abuse about him in print and on the airwaves, and then the leader of the Labour Party, having been turned down for his meeting, then marching around leading the protests, shouting and screaming. What kind of message does that send in the week of D-Day to the President of the United States, and more importantly, to the people he represents back in America, the American people who, when we needed them 75 years ago, they were there for us. Okay. And I think he can protest, but I'm also entitled to say that protest was unedifying and embarrassing to this country.
Let's hear.
So, like a boss, Piers instantly calls out the fact Comrade Corbyn will meet the leaders of groups like the IRA, but thinks it's okay to boycott the leader of the USA. We then hear Piers continue by bringing up the China leader banquet, showing Labour's ultimate hypocrisy regarding state visits. But I've covered this before, so we won't really talk about it much here. We'll get on to the next clip.
The man in the check shirt.
Her Majesty the Queen is regarded across the world as one of the best leaders there is. She is neutral and she has a great deal of diplomacy. What part of that does Jeremy Corbyn fill on a world stage?
Let's hit the man here. I'll come back to you, Anneliese.
Piers made a point. We're just trying to leave the European Union, and never more than now. We're trying to be an outward-facing country. We've got to engage with countries all over the world outside of Europe, and then you have this kind of protest going on with one of the biggest countries in the world that we need to trade with, we need to engage with. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Woman at the back there.
Can I just say that that wasn't a proper demonstration? That was a disgusting spectacle of an effigy of Donald Trump, a US president, democratically elected. It wasn't a coup, he was democratically elected, sitting on a toilet in the middle of central London. That was disgusting. Sadiq Khan should be spending more time trying to control the knife epidemic going on in London instead of protesting against Donald Trump.
Let me just stop it there. The first guy notes the fact our Queen is regarded as one of the great leaders across the world. He asks, what part of that does Jeremy Corbyn fit? I can answer that question very quickly. He fits none of them terms. It should be considered treason for anyone to suggest such things. That snivelling shitweasel Corbyn is a septic spot on the arse of humanity. There is nothing else to describe him. Diarrhea has more integrity than Jeremy Corbyn. The second guy points out people just want Brexit to be done, and protesting the leader of a massive nation who is an ally is stupid. I expect the left hated that guy saying that. It goes against their narrative, I'm sure. We then hear an older lady who absolutely shits on the protesters and everyone's favourite shit cunt, London Mayor Sadiq Khan. She also ridicules the £25,000 Donald Trump on the toilet statue. She is right calling it a disgraceful spectacle. It was an embarrassment to our nation. Now, I'm just speculating here, but since the BBC had the Trump balloon in their studio, I would put money on it that staff from all the left-wing propaganda networks chipped in to the GoFundMe page for this protest, whatever you would call it, statue. Since the protesters hardly come out in force, maybe they knew the protests would flop, so they had to try and sensationalise them, as the balloon was old news now. They needed something new to give the media showing something against Trump, and especially since Trump conducted himself impeccably, they had nothing to use as ammunition against him. Now, this woman is like the BBC's core demographic as well, so it must have been a big shock for them to see her move over to the dark side in their eyes. These are the types of people TV stations aim to indoctrinate with their deranged ideology. It seems to be failing. Now, you can hear by the venom in her voice that she is disgusted with the protesters, media and Labour politicians in general for allowing and promoting this disgraceful protest against the democratically elected President of the United States. Before pointing out how Sadiq Khan should focus more on knife crime than Donald Trump. I have been saying that since his ridiculous article calling Trump, the Brexit Party and both sets of supporters fascists. Now let's hear from some pro-Corbyn audience members, along with the panel's response.
Is there anyone in the audience who supports Jeremy Corbyn's decision to protest? Yes, the man here in the jacket, in the striped shirt.
I think protest is all well and good. I think it's part of the democracy in which we live. But I think Jeremy Corbyn should have met Trump and he should have protested face to face with the man rather than on the street. That would have made him a much more credible leader of the opposition, which we are sadly lacking at the moment.
The man in the white shirt at the back.
Piers Morgan talks brought up about D-Day there, and I've seen a lot on social media about people saying it's disrespectful to the memory of those who fought on D-Day to protest in that manner. What I would say is actually more disrespectful to the memories of the people who fought on D-Day is to not protest and simply wave out a red carpet for a racist a misogynist, who is allowing people, who is allowing children to die in immigrant camps on his watch. You know, you talk about human rights. Where's the human rights for those who are dying in the immigrant camps he's setting up?
When you say they're dying, you're talking about children being separated from their parents. I think that's what you're talking about.
So we start with an older gentleman who, while he is kind of defending Corbyn, still kind of shits on the snivelling fuck pig, because the truth is Corbyn is anything but a leader, so he's not really pro-Corbyn, is he? But then we moved on to the single soy boy in the audience, and I feel kind of sorry for this guy. You know, he was a nerd of school. It must have been tough.
Even like Nelson months, cause I'm gonna get that nerd.
Man's gonna get that nerd. Then you'll get punched in like you in at work.
Now he starts off with the ridiculous notion that soldiers who died in World War II would not like Trump being the president or being in the UK. Are these people completely stupid? Firstly, I'm sure the soldiers that fought and died defeating the authoritarian rulers during the war would not want the UK to be a member of the EU. They fought for our sovereign freedom and sovereign rights, not to become part of a superstate. They also seem to forget that these soldiers would consider the left's disgusting cunts for calling normal people in their countries, the countries they fought to defend, fascists, when they actually fought against real fascists. It seems to me these far left nutcases have no fucking respect for the World War II heroes' memory or what they fought for. This is a fucking disgrace. Now this clown finishes off with all the buzzwords that you could expect these shit weasels to use, and tries to imply that Trump is killing babies, which thankfully the host shuts down. Now let's hear the panel response to this.
Drew, Ian Blackford was also protesting, wasn't he?
Well, it is really important to engage with people when you don't agree with them. But let's face it, a state visit, which would have been requested by the Prime Minister through the Queen, a state visit is an honour, not a requirement for that engagement. And we obviously must, make sure that we're working with our allies and working with people to get that engagement, building on a strong relationship we've had with America.
But do you think Ian Blackford was right to be protesting?
But that relationship lasts long after Donald Trump has left office. That has been something that's endured for a long time and will endure. And it's really important to tell people when they've got things wrong face to face. I agree with the comment that was made earlier. So, yes, you should protest when it's appropriate. You should also engage when it's appropriate.
Did the SNP request a meeting with Trump?
Well, I don't know if we've actually requested a meeting, but I'm sure that we would have been willing to take one with him in order to point out that the policies that he's put forward in terms of being a climate change denier, in terms of saying that he's going to put the Iran nuclear deal in jeopardy by withdrawing from that he may come out of NATO, are not helpful to our security or indeed to the benefit of people. And it's very clear that in Scotland, his values are not those values of the people of Scotland. It's very, very clear that people don't react that way. And for somebody who has separated parents from their children, and those children have actually been put in cages, it is important not to roll out the red carpet and enable that kind of behaviour.
So this SNP ponce from the Scottish National Socialist Party says a state visit is an honour, not a requirement. Well, guess what, fuckpig? The Queen was honoured to welcome the fucking God Emperor Trump over here. If you have a problem with that, sweetheart, like I said earlier, take your dumb self over to the palace and take it up with Her Majesty the Queen. I'm sure, like me, she will swiftly tell you to fuck off. Though she will likely be slightly more diplomatic in her wording, the sentiment will remain the same.
You can engage, but we shouldn't be enabling.
We did roll out the red carpet for Barack Obama, and he deported 3 million illegal immigrants. He was known as the deporter-in-chief.
Okay.
And we also rolled it out for Tony Blair rolled it out for George W. Bush 6 months after the illegal Iraq war. So, Labour...
OK, but Piers, I want to hear from the rest
It doesn't make it right, but it does mean there's a double standard about Trump, which I find a little bit irritating, frankly.
So it's not often we can say it, but the voice of reason is once again fucking Piers Morgan. He calls out the hypocrisy regarding previous governments allowing the deporter-in-chief Barack Obama and President Bush, who got us involved in 2 unnecessary wars in the Middle East, amongst other shit. And I mean, Piers should not be surprised. The current Labour Party are being investigated for anti-Semitism, and its leader has been arrested at an IRA rally back in the 80s. What do you really expect? Now, finally, we're going to hear from the Mirror editor, and then we'll wrap up the video before it ends up taking about half an hour or 40 minutes.
I think the thing with Donald Trump, as gentleman there said, there are clearly a lot of things about him that don't sit well with British values. I mean, we know he's been racist. We know he's separated children from their parents. We know that some of the ways that he's treated women have been appalling. But when you're in a high position in politics, you don't have to like everybody that you deal with. And I think if you look at the way the Queen tackled this issue this week, she was pitch perfect in that she had this bully, I mean, Piers may not agree, this sort of braying character who is what he is with Donald Trump. And she, in the state banquet, when she said about the importance of the institutions that have kept us security and stability since the Second World War, you hope that he listened to those words, and you hope that in this week of all weeks, and D-Day, he sees the value of alliances, and that is the message you would have liked Jeremy Corbyn to have taken to him face to face, rather than down a microphone at a rally.
Over at the back.
Now, while the Mirror editor starts off with the usual racist claims, from which I'm still yet to see any actual evidence of Trump being racist, she does actually back up the statement that Corbyn's protest speech was ridiculous, noting how the Queen acted like a true leader, something Corbyn could never do. Too many people think Trump is our enemy. The guy is half British. His mother was Scottish and a massive fan of the Queen. For that reason, I'm sure he would not be out to harm the UK. It's a shame we can't say the same about the UK government and the Labour Party. So that's going to be the end of the video, guys. Remember to drop a like, leave a comment and subscribe, as it helps the channel a lot. And I'll see you all in the next video.
Man's gonna kill this shit. You'll need SWAT and medics too. Off with the contract credits due. Punchline king, I'm ahead of you. A your knees where you're heading to. Whip is green but the lights are blue. Bars are shit, take the mic from you. Heating up cheese, I don't like fondue.